Hi guys, give me a few seconds. I'm going to do the audio thingy on my laptop and then we can get started, okay? Yep, I'm ready. Hold on. What's up everyone? Welcome back to my YouTube channel / my podcast. I am the marketing nomad. My name is Prithvi Madhukar. I am the author of 0 to 4 Figures and Self-Loved. I'm also a podcaster, YouTuber, Etsy shop owner, Skillshare teacher, and a marketing strategy consultant as well. All of the links are in the description box below if you would like to check it out. Now, welcome to episode 170 of the Ask TMN series, where we're going to be talking about how do you know if your business idea is a good one. Now, if you're new here, Ask TMN is a series where I answer questions that solopreneurs usually have about marketing, mindset, as well as business. All right, so the way that I've structured this podeo is the first part, we're kind of going to go into what exactly constitutes as a good idea. And then the second part, we are going to get into 8 different areas for you to look into so that you can validate your idea, okay? Now, I do want to put a little bit of a disclaimer, and I think I should for every single, Ask TMN episode. Whatever tips and advice you get, all of these have to be a starting point for you to develop, because it's going to vary depending on the industry you're in, as well as the unique business idea that you have, so on and so forth. But these would be the base, and of course, you can go adding layers to that to validate your idea. All right, so first up, let's get into the first part that I do have for you, and that is, well, how do you know if it's even a good idea? And of course, there are a number of ways that you can go about this. For me, primarily, the first is the idea profitable? Whatever price point that you are setting for the products and the services, are people even going to be willing to pay for it? I think that's something that is very, very important, especially when you have a business idea. I mean, I have seen very real life examples where the solopreneur, they price their product / their services, but people aren't really willing to pay for it. So when I say profitable, I don't just mean, well, are you going to give yourself a good enough profit margin? No, people also have to be willing to pay you for the price point that you've put. So for me, I think that also constitutes as whether or not the business idea is profitable. Now, the second is whether it is a defined solution to a problem that exists right now. Either maybe you see your competition doing it, but they're not doing it right, or maybe they're not doing it at all, and you feel that you can step in. It's a defined solution that either people have not recognized yet, and so your marketing will come into that where you help them recognize, or it is a solution that for a problem that people are actively looking for as well. Both of these are okay, but it needs to be a solution for a particular problem. All right, so that is what I would say to be, what constitutes as an idea being a good one. And then the third thing that I would like to get into is sometimes everything can seem really perfect on paper. All right, you've said, oh, okay, well, I can get maybe 1,000 clients in the first 1 month, and then everything just skyrockets. I can break even within this first 6 years with these many sales, so on and so forth. Sometimes it looks really, really good on paper, but can it be shifted into the practical world? I think that is where a gap usually occurs when it comes to an idea being good. It could look great on paper, but you've got to see whether it can actually be implemented, whether it is practical for you. So those would be 3 things for me that constitute, I guess, the third point, an extension of that, I would say, well, is it realistic? Is it something that is practical? Is it realistic? And the fourth thing that I would personally get into is if the idea has a degree of scalability to it. So it's not just you enter the market and then everything stops, like you can't push further, because a huge part of this entrepreneurial journey is pivoting and that need for growth. You need the space to grow. And I think that when you enter, there at least needs to be that opportunity, that potential for growth, either in expansion of your products or even expansion in one product and then maybe multiple features or so on and so forth. And sometimes, depending on the resources that you have access to, it could also be expanding through different industries or complementary industries, so on and so forth. So whatever business idea that you do have, always check for its potential for scalability. That's very, very important, because very soon you are going to run out of whatever you are currently focusing on. And at that point, you need to push the barriers. There needs to be space for you to even push those barriers. And so when you step into the entrepreneurial world with the idea that, all right, this idea can be scalable, there is potential for growth in different ways, yeah, I would say that idea is a good one as well. And for me, when I started out, I gotta tell you, I knew that it was realistic, my idea, the whole digital entrepreneurship, even though at the time that I began, it wasn't so common. And of course, now because of the pandemic and the 2 years that we spent online, there's been a sudden rush to it. But even at that time when I did enter the market, I did feel that there was space for me to grow, not just in terms of the services that I offered, but even in terms of the products. And today, if you see, I have productivity planners, trackers, journals. I also have digital products on Etsy to help entrepreneurs and solopreneurs with their marketing, with their business, with their productivity as well. And then, with the YouTube videos that I make, there is space for me to grow, and even more so if I want to. And, even me writing my books, that too was, when I stepped into the entrepreneurial world, like right from year one, I knew I was going to write a book. I knew I wanted to have digital products at some point. I knew I wanted to set up courses. I knew so on and so forth. And I did all of those along the way. And the reason I could do that was because I knew there was potential for scalability in the idea that I had. And so for me, I believe that to be very, very important, because in our nature, as solopreneurs, as entrepreneurs, I think part of our nature is looking to grow, looking to go beyond what we are doing at this moment of time. And so when you go in and you get stuck, unfortunately, that causes a lot of frustration and internal struggle. So I always like to say, if you have an idea and there is potential for scalability, yeah, most likely it leans towards being a good idea, all right? So those just are a few ways that you can identify if the idea that you have is a good one. Now, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into 8 different areas, and there's one thing that I do want to say before we get into the 8 different areas that you can look into to see if your idea is a good one. And that is, all the ideas, like I mentioned before, it could look good on paper. You could take every single point that we talk about in this podeo, but at the end of the day, there is no way for you to know for sure that the idea is a good one or it's actually going to work out. Unfortunately or fortunately, that's where the thrill is, right? The journey is just so. So I guess what I would want to tell you at this point is, if there's some aspects that are not working out, look to fix those and then gain that confidence through that and then move forward with it. Especially with the entrepreneurial journey, usually the idea that you start out with, yeah, it's always pivoting. It's always and always about pivoting. So usually the idea that you even start out with might not be the end result. You might have to pivot multiple times throughout the way, because again, industry to industry, person to person, like you as a person, you've got your own individual strengths, weaknesses, resources that you have access to, resources that you do not have access to, so on and so forth, right? So the factors affecting you and your business are so unique, and you could have a great idea, but sometimes if the external factors are not supporting, again, it might not work out. But what I do want to say, and I don't want to, sound too negative, what I do want to say is if you're confident about the idea based on what we discussed today in this patio, make that judgment call, okay, for yourself. I do want to say, use whatever I share with you in this patio as a starting point and then add different layers to that, all right? So the first point that we are going to get into is market demand. All right, so first off, is there a clear need for whatever product or service you're putting out there? What problem is your idea going to solve? And do people really need a solution to that problem? All right. Not just that, you also have to understand what exactly is the pain point of your target market at this point. What exactly is lacking in the market that they feel they need, or at some point in the future, the pain and the frustration is going to get so intense that they are going to start looking for solutions. So understanding this is very, very key. And if it ties to your idea, if you can say, oh, well, yes, it does solve a pain point that my audience currently has, then I would say, put a tick mark over there. That's one thing that you could give yourself a good foundation, especially when it comes to solving a need. An extension of that would be, are people willing to pay the price point that you are selling it at? That's also very, very important, because you could have a good idea, you could have a solution that really works, but maybe it's just not a price point that people are willing to pay. Maybe, and there could be different reasons for that, okay? One, maybe the problem is not so intense that they want to shell out that price point. Or number two, it's just beyond the budget of your target market to pay for that price point, which means that your processes, the solution that you have is expensive, more expensive than their budget, so on and so forth. So there are many different reasons for that. So if the price point that you are setting is not within the, I guess I would say, capability as well as acceptance of the target audience that you're putting, that might be something that you want to reevaluate in your business idea as well. So, it has to fulfill a gap, it has to, fulfill a need. You also have to check out if there is going to be a growing demand for it in the future as well. So these are few things that you need to look into when it comes to market and your demand for the idea that you have, all right? Now we come to number 2, which is your value proposition. What exactly is your idea? What is the unique selling point, USP, of your product? What makes it different from the existing products and services that are out there? What is your competition not doing that you can do right now? What is your competition doing that you can actually do better than them? All of those come into your idea, and that's when you add different layers to your idea, because as even though your idea might be good, if there's too much competition for it and you are unable to match their price point, or you are unable to differentiate yourself from your competition, then again, need to reevaluate your business idea and see how you can make it stand out, how you can make yourself unique, the idea that you have, or the features that you're going to give as part of the product, or the extra services that you could add in, so on and so forth. And yeah, again, this ties back to understanding your target market as well, understanding what they're looking for, what need of them is not being met by your current competitors. Yeah, that's also very, very important at this point. And I guess as an extension of value proposition, what I would want to say is understanding how your idea is going to make you stand out in the market. Very, very important. All right, so if these are few things that you've not thought about yet, yeah, it might be helpful for you to sit down, take a pen, take a piece of paper, sit down and write out how exactly is your idea different from what is in the market right now. And if it's not different, all right, that's okay too, all right? But understand how you can make it different. That's important. What are certain things that you can do differently that work to your strengths that work to the resources that you do have that can help you stand out from your competition. So that is also very, very important when you are looking into whether or not your business idea is a good one. And then the last point that I would want to say when it comes to value proposition is looking at the barriers of entry. How difficult is it going to be for you to get into it? What is going to be the investment on your end to enter a market? Is the barriers of entry too high, too low? At what point are you going to break in because of the amount of investment that you've had to put in to break through the barriers of entry? And barriers of entry is not always financial. Yes, I do agree to that. Sometimes it's also about the mindset of the people, Maybe they are so attached to one particular brand, and maybe there's sentimental value to that brand, so on and so forth. So when you come along, how are you going to differentiate yourself and overcome that barrier of entry? Even their mindset is a barrier of entry as well. That's very, very important to understand and to keep in mind as you are entering a new market. So all of those would constitute, like if you have a plan for all of those, and you are able to put yourself in a situation where you can stand out from your competition, there is something of value that differentiates you between you and your competition. And when I say value, it has to be value perceived by your audience. You could say, oh, well, I offer this, like A, B, C, D, more than my competition. But if your audience does not place value to that, if they don't really care about ABCD, then they're not going to shift away from your buying from your competition, right? So it's important for you to have value or place value in the things that your audience places value on, all right? So use those as your differentiating factors and make sure that those are things that your target audience values and also are willing to pay for as well. All right, so that would be number 2. And then number 3, we get into your revenue model. All right, is it scalable? Is there potential for growth? Is there a growing demand for it? What exactly is your revenue model? Is it sustainable long term? And then a few of the other things that I've written over here in my notes is, the price point that you are setting, is it competitive? And if it is not competitive, how can you make it competitive? And if your price point is a cut above the rest of the competition, then how are you going to justify that price point to the audience? And how are you going to make them see value in that as well? And are you able to pull this off? That's very, very important when you are looking into your revenue model as well as your pricing. So you can have different strategies for this, so on and so forth, but it's important for you to be able to justify that price point to your audience, all right? Then another thing that you can look into with respect to your revenue model, for example, the demand for your product or your service rises. Can you handle that scalability? Do you have the resources to manage that or to scale as the demand grows? That's also very important to understand and to figure out. It might not be something that you have to look into immediately, but it's good to have a plan for that, because some ideas, there might be no room for scalability as demand rises. And so you need to make sure that your idea, at least to an extent, can, it has that potential for scalability if and when demand rises, all right? And then it's also important at this point to understand what are your limitations with respect to scalability. What would you have to compromise on for you to scale? What exactly is required from you from a resources point of view when you are looking to scale your business and when that time comes? So understanding that and whether you can provide those resources at that point in time, so on and so forth. All of those are very, very important for you to analyze beforehand. And you might ask me at this point, well, Prit, do I really have to think so much? I gotta say yes, you actually do, because sometimes when you step into it without knowing too much, without having a basic idea of how things may go, whether or not things go the way that you think it does. I think that it just helps to be better prepared. It just helps to have these questions answered beforehand. There are already so many twists and turns and I don't know, upside downs, everything on this entrepreneurial journey. At every single corner, you are going to be surprised. You are also going to be shocked. And so for me, the way that I see it, the more mentally prepared you are, and more than mentally prepared, just even having all of these sort of at least outlined would actually help you manage those turns, those twists, the upside downs that you are going to face in the future. And it's also going to help you make better decisions when you are pivoting, as in when, the journey rolls out, which is pretty natural. So for me, one thing that I've learned from my own journey is I was absolutely mentally, emotionally prepared for the journey. I gotta tell you. And the reason for this was very subconscious. I mean, I didn't know it beforehand that I had to be that mentally prepared. But I'd watched my parents become entrepreneurs and business owners from the age of 13, like when I was 13. And so for me, I had watched them. I knew I had a very realistic outlook to the entrepreneurship journey. I knew that 9 out of 10 times I'd be putting out fires, I'd be pivoting, I'd be working on something that wasn't going right, or I would be trying to fix something, so on and so forth. So I had a very realistic approach and thought process when it came to the entrepreneurial journey, and I gotta thank my parents for that. For being so open and transparent with sharing their journey with me as they were going through it. And so when I stepped into the entrepreneurial world, I had a lot of things in my mind running like, okay, what if this happens? Then how do I deal with it? Okay, what if this happens? Then how do I deal with it? And I really think that mindset that I was in really helped me tackle the extreme lows that comes with this journey, and it still does even to this day. Like, even though I'm 4 years in, I'm constantly asking myself, well, what happens if this goes haywire, or will I be able to scale this part of it, or how else can I go about this, or if some external factor kind of comes in and just wipes it all out, what do I do? How do I go about it? So it just helps to have that level of preparedness. All right, so it may happen, it may not happen, okay? But I do want to say it helps to be prepared, because there are just that many turns, that many twists, that many lows, that many times that you have to pivot. And so it just helps to have thought of it a little bit in advance before you jump into it. And yes, I want to say, no, you are not going to think of every single thing that's going to come about. You are not going to be completely prepared. You're not going to have all of your ducks in a row, but it helps to have at least a few ducks in your corner, okay, before you start. So that's what I would want to say. And yeah, I gotta say, just knowing my parents' journey, it made me infinitely prepared for what this journey was going to be like for me. And it still does even to this day. I mean, watching my parents, it's just been such a blessing, and I have to say that. So for me, that preparedness, whether or not it really does happen, or if something new just comes my way, just helps me, I don't know, be in a much more calmer state of mind to make decisions. Yeah, I think that's how I would want to put that. Right? So it's important that you think of all of this before you get into it. At least have some idea. You don't have to have it completely mapped out. Like I said, you don't have to have all of your ducks in a row to get into the entrepreneurial journey. I stand by that. But at the same time, you need to know at least where your ducks are. They might not be in a row, but you at least need to know, okay, well, that duck is over there, that duck is over there. Yeah, okay, I can manage to some extent, and so on and so forth. So that's how I would put it. I've never heard of anyone saying it this way, but that's how I would put it, okay? So you don't need to have all of your ducks in a row, but you need to know, at least have a rough idea of where your ducks are at, all right? Now, then we were still talking about the revenue model, right? I'm just looking down at my notes, and then something I've written over here is bottlenecks. Now, sometimes with your business idea, what happens is you are able to scale, and then shut. It kind of becomes a bottleneck where at the edge, it just tapers and, it just shuts off, right? So sometimes that could happen with a business idea as well. And it's important to understand what those bottlenecks could be for your business. It's not necessarily if this bottleneck happens, my business is going to shut down. No, sometimes it could also be, bottlenecks could also come in the form of, depending on a third party to finish the work so that you can get your work finished, so on and so forth. For example, I'll give you an example, okay? For example, you are a business coach, okay? And maybe you've hired a freelancer to do research for one aspect of your client's business, right? And so as they do the research, as they collect the data for you, maybe they're collecting the data, you have to wait for that third party to finish so that you can start your work on analyzing that data, on figuring out strategies for that, so on and so forth. So again, you are depending on a third party over there. And tomorrow, if that company shuts down, or maybe the freelancer decides to stop working, again, that's a bottleneck, right? You're depending on a third party. And so you have to keep shifting. So understanding what those bottlenecks are and being prepared for them, all right, their turnaround time is about 2 weeks. So I've got to make sure I keep 2 weeks of that space in the timeline that I'm setting for my client, so on and so forth. And then sometimes when you are selling a product, maybe you have to wait for a certain part to be manufactured by another company, so on and so forth. So you have to wait for that. And if something happens to the industry that particular company, manufacturing company is in, again, you are affected by that. All of these are bottlenecks in some form, right? They are affecting you. So having all of that in mind, just being cognizant of that is very, very important. Just understanding what are the factors that are affecting your business, what could potentially cause a problem in the future, what could cause a congestion. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. What could cause a congestion with your business at some point in the future? Just having all of those outlined is also a good way for you to be prepared as you get into the entrepreneurial journey. Hold on, we are at 27 minutes, which means I have to change the video thing. Give me a second, okay? All right, so we were talking about revenue model, and the last thing that I've written in my notes is the idea that you have, it has to be practical. It can be amazing on paper, and most of the times ideas are amazing on paper. I gotta tell you that. But it's about how you envision it to become a reality, being practical, being realistic with your idea. Yeah, that is where, people tend to have a little bit of a problem with that. So my idea of sharing this audio with you is so that you are a little bit more cognizant of how practical your idea is, what actually is going to happen when you do implement that idea, what potential problems could come your way as you implement the idea, what factors are affecting the idea that you do have, the industry that you're in, you as a person as well, right? So on and so forth. So just understanding that also is important. The fourth point that we are getting into would be validation. Now, I believe this to be very, very important, and I do this every single time I am doing any sort of venture for my business. I still do it even to this day. I'm 4 years in and I still do it. Any idea that you have, okay, it needs to be validated. You need to get feedback for it. And the reason why feedback is so important is because in your mind, you could perceive it to be an amazing idea, all right? But you've got to understand if that is also how your audience understands it, or that is how your audience perceives it. And sometimes there may even be something that you didn't think of that your audience really needs. And they say, okay, well, B part of your product was really good, but I also want C, or I expected C also to be a part of this service, to be a part of this product. So understanding how your audience thinks and whether your product, your service matches that is very, very important. It is probably the most important step for any step that you are taking for your business. Before writing my first book, I put out little bits of content on my social media pages just to get that feedback, that validation. And you can ask even some of my followers. I reached out to them. I said, what did you think of this post that I put? What were your thoughts on this? Not just that, I went on multiple, I think I must have gone on at least 40 to 50 podcasts where I shared my thoughts, my whatever ideas that were running in my mind that I was going to put into my book. I shared those. I had conversations with people about those. I even brought on guests on my podcast and I asked them, well, what do you think of this line of thought? So on and so forth. And so for me, that was my way of validating that. So the idea that I had in my mind was I wanted to write a book, and I had to validate whatever it was that I was putting into that book. Even for self-love, some of the quotes that you see in my second book, Self-Love, were actually things that I had put out already out there for people to see, and I saw their reactions. Some worked, some did not work. What did not work, I didn't put it in my book. So for me, every single thing that you might be doing, whatever idea it is, whatever steps, even if it's not just a business idea, it could be a new product idea or a new venture or a different angle that you are taking your business, whatever it might be. If it's an idea, it has to be validated. That is very, very important. Understanding the feedback, what people like, what people don't like, what people are expecting out of you that you could not deliver, that you can work on, so on and so forth, is very, very important. So for me, I personally think that having that validation for your idea is important, and you need to give time for your idea to be validated. And I don't just mean asking your mentors or asking your friends. No, you have to go out there. You have to reach out to your target market. You have to have that one-on-one with them. Truly find out what exactly is going on in their mind. And also, I do want to put it out there that it's important for you to, I guess, understand that just because people say that, yeah, I would be willing to pay at this price point, yeah, you've got to take that a bit, with a bit of salt. Yes, all right? Because what people say, what people perceive, and what they actually do, like when it comes to actually shelling out money, yeah, it's a different thing. So whatever they perceive, always add in a little bit extra. At least this is how I do it. For me personally, in my first book, there were 61 stories and lessons. It's a 300 plus page book. And, I think I could have been contented with just maybe 30 lessons or 35. No, I wanted to give that little bit of extra, that extra value in my book. And I made sure that, it was just the best ideas that had been validated by people, so on and so forth. So always give that extra. This is just my perception and from my experience, okay? I've not seen any data about this, but this is just from my experience. Yeah, if people say, yeah, I'm willing to pay for this at this price point, like this product at this price point or this service at this price point, yeah, always add a little bit more to that, okay? That's just my tip from me, okay? I've not seen any data about this, but from what I've come to understand is what people perceive they will pay and what they actually pay for, yeah, usually there's a little bit of gap. And if you can fill that gap, that's where you come out ahead, okay? So that's just a little bit of a tip from me. And so with your validation, of course, you are going to take some time to improve on your idea, keep working on it. It's good to ask your mentors and people who are educated in the field, but I will say ask from the source. The source is your target market, okay? That's where you will get the best information possible. Okay, so that was number 4 for you. Number 5, risk management. What are the risks? Very, very simply put, what exactly are the risks? If and, by chance something goes wrong, can you manage it? Can you do something to help yourself in that situation? For me, something that was constantly in my mind because I had seen my parents was the financial risk of being an entrepreneur. And for me, one thing that I personally think about in every decision that I make in my life is, am I emotionally, mentally, and financially as well, physically ready to handle this risk if something goes wrong. And it's only when I get yes on all 4 accounts do I move forward with that, or at least I perceive that I have a yes on all 4 accounts. So for me, it was, if this didn't work out, or if something went wrong with the business, yes, I had, and I'm very fortunate to say that, like, knock on wood, I had my parents that I could go to for help in case something went wrong. And, for me, just having that layer of support was really, really gave me that confidence. But at the same time, there were also other things. I had savings that I had saved. It was not much, I gotta tell you, it was not much, but just having that financial safety net, I guess I would say. And then even like mental and physical and emotional risk, there is a lot of risk that goes into this journey. So just having that safety nets for all of them, very, very important. And of course, depending on the industry that you're in, depending on your own life, the individual circumstances that are going on with your life, there are going to be risks that are unique to you. So what could those risks be, and how would you manage them, and how do you create safety nets? And sometimes you might not be able to create a safety net immediately. You might need a little bit of time to create that safety net. So how do you keep working to create that safety net bit by bit for yourself, so on and so forth. All of those very, very important for you to look into, because the entrepreneurial journey is a risk. It is. I mean, that is the very definition of being an entrepreneur. We are in this at some risk of our own. So just having safety nets for that, or at least having a plan to build safety nets for that as time goes on, very, very helpful, okay? Now, the 6th thing that I do want to talk about is the infrastructure. How exactly are you going to create this plan from paper into reality? How are you going to build it out? What is your logistics requirement? What systems and processes are you going to have? How are you going to show up? Because you are part of the infrastructure, right? And so understanding what are the resources that you have access to, resources that you do not have access to, skills that you do have, knowledge that you do have, what is a gap in the infrastructure, and what do you need to hire? What exactly are going to be the potential challenges while you are building this infrastructure. All of that, very, very important to make note of. And just, I guess, it's important to keep in mind as you are building out, because you might not have all of the pieces in place, but at least having a plan and saying, okay, well, this part of the infrastructure, I've got to work on it, and then give yourself like a time to figure those out, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's very important to look into the infrastructure. What are the potential challenges, and how are you going to build it? How are you going to build the idea? How are you going to make the idea a reality, basically? All right. So if it's able to, like, if the idea that you have, you are able to, from paper, build it into something bit by bit, I would say, yeah, that's definitely a sign that it's a good idea, okay? Now, the 7th thing that I want to talk about is goal setting. So, with goal setting, I want to just ask one question. Is it realistic now, at this point in time? Not for the market that you envision, or the growth rate that you envision, or the target audience mindset that you envision maybe 1 or 2 years down the line. The idea that you have needs to be realistic for the time that you are setting up it, which I guess if you're watching this, it's now, right? So understanding that it has to be realistic and of course practical and aligned to the conditions that is existing at the moment in time. Yeah, again, that would be another sign that it is a good idea. And if there's a misalignment, either you've got to wait it out, or you've got to tweak that part of the idea so that it actually fits to the conditions that are existing at this moment in time. So that would be number 7, goal setting. The 8th thing that I do have for you, and this is probably going to be the most important thing, is you. You are a huge part of that idea. Don't ever forget that. You are a huge part of that idea. So you being ready, whether it is mentally ready, emotionally ready, physically ready, financially ready, You've got to take that into consideration. You've got to see if that's a good idea for you to do it right now at whatever stage of life that you are in, or whatever circumstances are surrounding you, whatever resources you have access to, whatever resources you don't have access to, the skills that you have, the skills that you do not have and hope to acquire, or the knowledge that you do have, the knowledge that you may need some time to get, I guess I would say, so on and so forth. And what are your strengths? Does the idea align to your strengths? This is so important. I have seen people, they've got a brilliant idea. The idea by itself is good, but it is not according to their strengths. And frankly, it's just whatever is going viral at the moment or whatever other people are doing. Yeah, for me, that's a huge misalignment. I see a big misalignment over there. The idea has to coordinate to your strengths. And the most important thing, the idea has to be something that you are excited about, that you are passionate about. Don't just do something, and I see this a lot, and it really breaks my heart. Don't do something just because it's going viral somewhere or someone else is doing it and you feel this need to catch up with them, so on and so forth. No, that's such a detrimental state to be in. The only person who's going to lose at the end of the day, if you continue in that mindset, is you. You've got to go ahead with the idea that you are excited about, that you are passionate about, that you just want to get into. It doesn't matter if no one else is doing it. No, don't think about all that. Focus on whatever we've talked about in this podeo. More importantly, you've got to be passionate about the idea. You've got to be excited about the idea. Okay, don't chase someone else's dream. You create your own. You chase after that, okay? You get to do that. You get to feel that joy and that peace that comes with creating a dream that is truly yours and chasing after that, okay? So what I do want to say is it's important for you to be passionate about it, because there are just that many lows on this journey, and that passion you have for the idea, that is what is going to carry you. I cannot emphasize on this enough. The passion that you have is going to be a very, very, very big determining factor of whether this idea is going to work out for you or not. Because halfway down the line, if you do not have the passion, you are going to quit. The journey is just that tough. Okay, but if you have the passion is what is going to kind of give you the momentum to, even if you're going down, it's going to push you up. Okay, so for me, that is the 8th point that I do have for you, is probably the most important thing. How do you feel about the idea? What are your strengths? Does it work to your strengths? Are you excited about this? Are you passionate about it? And so that also is a contributing factor to understanding if your idea is a good one or not. All right, so just to summarize all of the 8 points, let's do a quick recap, all right? The first one we talked about was market and demand. Is there a clear need? What exactly is the problem? Does your product, service, or your idea solve that? Does it fulfill a gap in the market? Number 2, value proposition, or what exactly is going to differentiate you from your competition? And more importantly, the price point that you're setting. Is your audience willing to pay you for being different from your competition, whatever it is that you are differentiating yourself? Number 3 we talked about was the revenue model. Is it sustainable long term? Is your pricing competitive? Can you scale it efficiently? Can you scale it in a way that can manage the demand that is going to rise, so on and so forth? The 4th one we talked about was validation. Did you get a fair feedback? Did you get good feedback? If you did not get, how are you going to improve on that? The 5th one that we talked about was risk management. What exactly are there? What are the risks that are going to come? How are you going to mitigate them? Or how are you going to create safety nets for each of those risks that are going to come along or are existing at the moment in time? Then we talked about infrastructure. How are you going to create the necessary infrastructure? What are going to be the potential challenges, and how are you going to overcome that? The 7th thing that we talked about was goal setting. Is it realistic for now, the current market conditions, the current target audience mindset, you currently, right now, at this moment in time? That's very important, not later, okay? So at the moment in time, whatever time that you wish to set it up, is it realistic? Is it practical for that period of time? Is it impactful? Is there space for more innovation? And then the 8th thing that we talked about was, are you excited about it? Are you passionate about it? Does it work to your strengths? You. That's very, very important, because you form a very, very big chunk of your business idea and your business as well. Okay? So for me, the way that I see this is, the more you can answer this question, the more stable your footing is. And like I said, you can't guarantee success or failure, especially on this journey. You cannot, okay? I frankly would extend it to life as well. You can't guarantee success or failure, but what you can guarantee is just having all the ammunition you need to at least put you in a state of mind where you are calm enough to make decisions as and when you need to, and as and when there is chaos around you. Because let me tell you, 90% of the time there's going to be chaos, okay? Just take it from me, all right? There's going to be everything coming at you from different directions. And so the more answers you have with you, I think it just puts you in a better state of mind. You just have that much more data, that much more information to make decisions that are most aligned to you and your business. All right, so this is where I wish to end this podeo. Now, if you liked this video, please do give me a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, because that tells you every single time I do upload a video. Other than that, well, if you want to catch me on my Instagram profile, you can catch me at The Marketing Nomad. I have 2 books, 0 to 4 Figures. The first one, yeah, that one. It's 61 stories and lessons of my first 3 years of digital entrepreneurship journey. You can catch it on Amazon. Link is in the description box below. Then there is Self-Loved, which is a compilation of 1,000 journal prompts, all aimed towards healing, growth, and self-discovery. That too is on Amazon, and of course links are in the description box below. Other than that, I have 18 productivity planners, journals, and trackers. They're called the Simple Series by The Marketing Nomad. And at the moment of publishing this podeo, all of them can be found on Amazon. So what you have to do, the simplest way to find all of my stuff, whether it's my books, my planners, my journals, my trackers, is to search my name on the Amazon search bar. It's Prithvi space Madhukar. Now, the minute you do that, you will be able to get an author page from me on Amazon, and all of my stuff will just be right there for you. Other than that, if you are looking for more help on validating your business idea, or you want me to answer more marketing questions of yours, so on and so forth, I do provide 1-hour consultation calls. They're called Power Hour calls. Now, if you're interested to book a slot for yourself, the link is in the description box below as well. Alrighty guys, I genuinely loved shooting this podeo. I really hope you liked it as well. Thank you so much for listening all the way up until here. I will catch you in my next podeo. Bye-bye.